Does the gentleman from Florida wish to present argument on why the resolution is privileged under Rule 9 to take precedence over other questions?
Yes, I do.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today because the dignity of the House has been called into question. You've heard the text of the resolution, but I think that some points bear highlighting. The BBC News has reported that leaders of one of the most powerful nations on earth, by the way, that's still us, willingly provoked a crisis that suspends public services. A leading Chinese news service stated, quote, "A dysfunctional Washington is now overspending the confidence of its leadership." A German newspaper stated, "The main actors in this dispute took a huge risk and proceeded to validate everyone who ever accused the political establishment in Washington of being rotten to the core. The public is left wondering how things could have been allowed to get to this point and why there is so much poison in the system." Another German newspaper said, quote, "What has already been apparent in America for a few years now is that the self-destruction of one of the world's oldest democracies is taking place. And the great tragedy here is that this work of destruction isn't being wrought by enemies of democracy, by greedy lobbyists or sinister major party donors. America's democracy is being broken by the very people who are supposed to carry it and preserve it, the politicians. What is clear is that America is politically bankrupt." And the headline of the New York Daily News, the fourth most widely circulated daily newspaper in the United States, on the first day of the government shutdown, read this way, quote, "House..."
The chair has heard the reading of the resolution. Does the gentleman have an argument to present as to why it's confined as a matter of privilege under Rule 9?
Yes, I do, and I was about to get to it.
The gentleman may proceed.
Thank you. As I just indicated, the headline on the New York Daily News, the fourth most widely circulated daily newspaper in the United States, on the first day of the government shutdown, read this way, quote, "House of Turds." The byline stated, "D.C. cesspools shut down the government and they get paid while the nation suffers." Just today, a new poll came out that demonstrated as follows. A national poll asked the following questions. What do you have a higher opinion of, Congress or witches? Congress, 32%, witches, 46%. What do you have a higher opinion of, Congress or hemorrhoids? Congress, 31%, hemorrhoids, 53%. What do you have a higher opinion of, Congress or dog poop? Congress, 40%, dog poop, 47%.
Will the gentleman suspend?
Yes.
The chair would again ask the gentleman from Florida to address whether or not this resolution is privileged under Rule 9.
Yes, I'm explaining why it's privileged under Rule 9. May I continue?
The gentleman may proceed so long as the gentleman is confining his remarks as to whether or not the resolution is privileged under Rule 9. And should the gentleman fail to continue along that path, pursuant to the chair's guidance, the gentleman will be ruled out of order and the chair will be prepared to rule on the question. Gentleman may proceed.
Mr. Chairman, one of the questions before the House on this resolution is whether the dignity of the House has been offended. And I am demonstrating vividly that the dignity of the House has been offended in support of this resolution. May I continue without interruption?
The gentleman may continue under the guidance issued by the chair. Proceed.
Good. The current polling indicates, what do you have a higher opinion of, Americans? Congress or toenail fungus? Congress, 41%, toenail fungus, 44%. What do you have a higher opinion of, Congress or cockroaches? Congress, 42%, cockroaches, 44%. What do you have a higher opinion of, Congress or potholes? Congress, 36%, potholes, 47%. And finally,
will the gentleman suspend? Once again, the chair is requesting of the gentleman from Florida to confine his remarks to whether or not the matter is privileged under Rule 9. Should the gentleman proceed in any other manner, the chair will be prepared to rule on the question.
Mr. Chair, that is exactly what I've been doing, and I would ask the Chair to allow me to continue without further interruption. May I continue?
The gentleman shall proceed so long as his comments are confined to whether or not the procedural issue of whether or not the issue is privileged under Rule 9.
Mr. Chair, I want to repeat, one of the questions to make that determination is whether the dignity of the House has been offended. And as I indicated, there is one final point to be made here before I get into further argument, which is this. The American public is now of the following opinion. What do you have a higher opinion of, Congress or zombies? Congress, 37%, zombies, 43%. Now clearly, statements such as these and others cited in the resolution call into question the dignity of the House. And these statements are not from a single editorial or merely one passerby. These statements are being expressed around the nation and across the globe. They've contributed to a congressional approval rating plummeting to 7%, that's 7%, in the latest Economist YouGov poll, and they must be addressed by this body. Thankfully, Rule 9 of the Rules of the House of Representatives provides members with a mechanism through which to address those times when the dignity of the House has been harmed and called into question. It allows for questions of privilege. Specifically, Rule 9 reads as follows. Questions of privilege shall be, first, those affecting the rights of the House collectively, its safety, dignity, and integrity of its proceedings. I submit to you, Mr. Chair, that these are questions squarely within the dignity of the House of Representatives. Further, Rule 9 provides that a resolution reported as a question of the privileges of the House shall have precedence of all other questions except for motions to adjourn. I've offered a resolution as a question of privileges of the House, and I'm here today to secure a vote on that resolution. Mr. Speaker, you should find the obvious, which is that the dignity of the House has been called into question, and no part of the resolution that I've offered goes beyond the scope of a question of privilege, such as attempting to legislate, so that a vote must be allowed on this measure. For the record, Mr. Speaker, the vote that should be allowed would be on the following resolution. Resolved, it is the sense of the House, 1, without seeking to effect a change in the rules or standing orders of the House or their interpretation, and 2, without prescribing a special order of business for the House, that a government shutdown is, and this is obvious at this point, a mark upon the dignity of the House, and the House should be willing to pass a clean continuing resolution to end it. That's right, a mark on the dignity of the House, and the House should be willing to pass a clean resolution to end it. What then is a satisfactory question of privilege? Well, from the plain text of Rule 9 and from existing precedent, a satisfactory resolution must demonstrate that the dignity of the House has been called into question, and it's been called into question to such a degree that I wanted to show you the cover from the Daily News, and I was presented to doing so because to show it to you, just to show it to you, would somehow be considered to be offensive to the dignity of this House. And the resolve clause of the resolution may not diverge from directing the into directing the legislative action of this body. I argue, Mr. Speaker, that this resolution satisfies both accounts. I have found no precedent in the annotated House Rules and Manual, or Hines, or Cannons, or Deschler's precedent that will allow the Chair to rule against the resolution before us today. In fact, one would question whether this entire body, including the parliamentarian, has been politicized unnecessarily if you do rule against that today. Not once do the precedents address a resolution that outlines a litany of condemnations against Congress from media sources around the world and here at home, as opposed to responding to a single source of criticism. And not once do the precedents rule on a resolution citing congressional approval ratings below 10%, in conjunction with persistent reporting against the dignity of the House. If the first hurdle to be crossed today is that the dignity of the House has to have been called into question, then, Mr. Speaker, you are required to rule in favor of this resolution, raising a question of the dignity of the House and the privileges of the House. If dignity means what the dictionary says it means, the state or quality of being worthy of honor or respect, then surely the honor and respect of this House has been called into question. When only 7 out of 100 Americans approve of what we do, the lowest approval rating ever, then surely our dignity has been diminished and is actively being called into question. If we are to be called obstructionists, practicers of partisan petulance, if we are to be called an establishment that is rotten to the core, if we are leaving Americans wondering why there is so much poison in the system, then surely our dignity as a body has been diminished. If we're accused of willingly provoking crises that suspend public services and decrease economic growth, then surely our dignity as a body has been diminished. If we cause international media outlets to refer to us as politically bankrupt and responsible for breaking America's democracy, then our dignity as a body, as a House, is being called into question.
Gentlemen will suspend. The chair has heard enough and is prepared to rule.
Well, the chair has not heard my arguments.
The chair again reminds the gentleman from Florida that he is not recognized and that the chair is prepared to rule on the question.
Well, excuse me, but I have a point of parliamentary order.
Hearing the gentleman's argument is within the chair's discretion. And the chair, once again, I'll remind the gentleman from Florida, is ready to rule on the question.
And the chair actually agreed to hear my argument, and having done so, the chair needs to hear my full argument.
The chair is prepared to rule on the question of whether the resolution offered by the gentleman from Florida constitutes a question of the privileges of the House under Rule 9.
Well, I'd have to say so, Mr. Chair, and doing so, you yourself at this point may be undermining.
Gentleman is not recognized. The resolution alleges that a lapse in appropriation impairs the dignity of the House. It further expresses a sense of the House concerning action it might take on an appropriation measure. The gentleman from Florida casts this proposal as a statement. As the chair ruled on recent occasions, such as October 2nd and October 3rd, 2002, March 11th, 2008, and December 13th, 2011, in each case consistent with the principle enunciated by Speaker Gillette in his landmark ruling of May 6th of 1921, a resolution expressing a legislative sentiment ordinarily does not give rise to a question of the privileges of the House under Rule 9. The precedent of March 11th, 2008 is particularly illustrative. On that occasion, a resolution alleged that legislative inaction had brought discredit upon the House and declared that the House should consider a motion to concur in a specified Senate amendment. The chair held that the resolution did not present a question affecting the rights of the House collectively, its safety, its dignity, or the integrity of its proceedings as required under Rule 9. These precedents are annotated in Sections 702 and 706 of the House Rules and Manual. The principle upon which they stand was articulated by the chair on January 24, 1996 as follows, to quote, "To rule that a question of the privileges of the House under Rule 9 may be raised by allegations of perceived discredit brought upon the House by legislative action or inaction would permit any member to allege an impact on the dignity of the House based upon virtually any legislative action or inaction," end quotes. The chair would not distinguish between those precedents addressing resolutions that called for specific legislative action and a resolution that merely provided a statement about such action. Both express a legislative sentiment and are properly initiated through the introduction of a resolution via the hopper. For these reasons, the resolution offered by the gentleman from Florida does not constitute a question of the privileges of the House under Rule 9.